How's it, everyone? And today we're going to talk about Git aliases. Now, I've been using aliases myself for quite a long time, and over the last couple of weeks, maybe months, I've been sharing my usage with aliases with a lot of my friends and colleagues. So today I thought I'll just record a quick video and show you how I'm using aliases. See maybe if you have your own interesting way of using aliases. So right here I have a empty directory, so there's nothing in there yet. So what I'm going to go do is just initialize that directory. Then the next thing that I want to do is just create a file. So I'll create a temp.txt. So let me just fix that. So there's a temp.txt. So if we look here now, we have that file, right? Now, if I want to go ahead and commit that file, what I'd do is say git add that file, and then I'd git commit with a message saying temp file. And when I do this, you'll see that I get an error. And the error is talking about some secret key. There's a whole bunch of X's. So what's going on here? Well, if I open up my git config, you'll see here that I have a whole bunch of X's in where my name and email address should normally be. I've also got the signing key set as XXX, which is obviously where this information is coming from. But what's forcing it to use that information is the fact that I'm saying that my GPG sign for commits is equal to true. So every single commit, it's going to try and sign it. And the way that works is it takes your name and your email address and then tries to find a signing key that's used for that name and email address. At least this is the case when your program is a GPG program. Now for my workflow, the way I'd get this to work is I'd go ahead here and I'll say git me. And you can see that says it's switched to my personal SSH profile. And then I'd go ahead and do that same commit that I did earlier. And you'll notice now it asks me to authenticate with one password. So I'll go ahead and do that. And now my commit has been made. So what did git me do? Well, again, if we look back in my git config, you see under this alias section, I've got an alias called me. And what that alias does is it sets a couple of the local config values, which you see above here. So you've got name, email, signing key, and this goes and sets name, it sets email. In this case, it also sets format. So in this, it says the format should be SSH. So instead of it using this GPG configuration, it's instead going to use this one, which will say, actually, don't use a GPG app, rather use SSH and from the 1Password app. And then I specify my public key, and then after that I just echo out some information for me so I know which configuration I've switched to. Now that might all be a lot to jump into when we just start talking about aliases. So let's take a step back and see, like, how do you create aliases yourself? Well, the way you do that is you go git config, and then you specify where you want to set it. So I generally set my aliases at a global level, but you can set it locally at a repo as well if you want. And then over here, I want to set alias, and then let's just say we want to set S. And what we want to set S to is status. So we don't like typing out status, it's a bit too long, we just want to type S. So we go ahead and push enter. And now what we can do is we can say git S, and you'll see that gives us the same output as if we went and ran git status. So if we go across to our git config, you'll see that there's now an S alias, and that's set to status. The one thing you might notice here is that this one just says status, where these all start with git. And the reason for that is that I just prefer seeing the full command when I look at my aliases. The way you can make sure it executes the whole command is by putting an exclamation before it. So in this case, this status would just call status. But if we had to go and make another one, and we called it S2, we could say exclamation to say execute this thing, and then we say git, so it's going to execute the git command, and then status after that. And now if we go and run git s2, you'll see it gives us the same output. And if we go and look in our config now, we've got this extra one here, which is git status. So you can see I've done this before with CA, so that's commits and add, and that goes and adds everything and then commits with an M at the end, which starts obviously getting ready for the message. So the way I would practically go and use that is that if I went and touched another file, so now we go get status, you can see that that file's been touched. I can go get CA to commit all, and I can say temp file, maybe temp file too. So again, to go and break up that command that we had earlier, it looked something like this. We ran git local, set the username, and I've set it to my name. And then I'm saying, and also run set the username, and also run setting the format to SSH, and also run set the signing key to this public key, and then lastly echo that file out. Now obviously this only works currently because I am signing my commits using 1Password in this case. I have another video that explains how you can get this set up for just normal GPG keys that use a password. I meant to make another one that uses a YubiKey, I just haven't got around to it. So if you do want to see how to do that, just leave a comment down below and I'll get through to creating that. But for now, what I'm going to show you how to do is how you can create your own sort of split profiles. Because what you might have noticed here is I have one for me, which sets it to my email address, my normal name, my signing key. I also have another one for SSW, so that's for all my work stuff, which sets it to my work email address. In this case, I use the same signing key because I'm just signing it with 1Password. But you can see my Me2 and my SSW2, those each use different keys, and those are using two different physical YubiKeys. So I no longer use that method to do my signing. I instead use the 1Password keys or SSH key. But I still keep this configuration in here in case something happens with my other configuration. I can just switch back to this easily. So you don't have to do signing in order to use multiple profiles, although you do have to use it as sort of your starting place in order to achieve that. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to replace all of this config with this simple config. So again, I'm going to have my X'd out general global user information. I'm going to say that the GPG's sign is true. So that's going to say for every single commit, I have to sign the commit. And then I've got two aliases here. One that's going to set it to Gordon and one that's going to set it to Gordon demo. And you can see the email address is different. And then critically, the difference here from these to my previous alias is that what I'm going to do is set the local getGPG sign configuration to false. So globally, it's going to say you have to sign stuff and it's going to look for the signing key. But then locally, it's going to say, well, you don't have to sign, and it's going to use these values and it's going to commit perfectly fine. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So I've gone ahead and cleaned out this directory again. So you can see if I list everything there, there's no Git folder, there's nothing. So again, I'm going to start off with a git init. And then I'm going to go and touch a file. Let's touch template.txt. And if we do a git status, you can see that that template.txt exists. Now, if we try and commit it, so we do git add dot git commit -m temp file. You can see that we get the message that says you can't do that. And again, that's because we're saying you have to sign. So just to show you what happens, if we say you don't have to sign, and again, we just go and say commit, that commit will be made perfectly fine. But then if we go look at the log, you can see that the author is X'd out, which is not very useful because obviously that's not then our user. So we'll go back here and change this back to true. In this side, we'll go touch another file. So there's another file. We'll go add that file. And we're just going to get back to the point where we were, where this is complaining about our commit. Now, the two commands that we have here now are get me and get demo. So I'm going to go and say get me. That's going to switch to my personal. Go do that commit again. It works perfectly fine. And then if I go ahead and create another file that we can touch, so you can see here we've got a new file. This time instead we're going to go get demo. So now switch to the demo account. and then we'll go git commit again and say this is 3. Now if we look at the log, you can see we've got the xx user, we then got my normal user, then we've got my demo user. So the way that this would work is you would normally clone a repo locally, and the first thing you would do when you clone the repo down locally is you'd say this is git me, or this is git demo, or whatever profile you want to switch to, you would say it's that profile. Now something else you could do just for making it easier is to prefix this with like profile dash, and that will then tell you that this is a profile versus just a random command. In my case, I'm not doing that just because it's easier to type without it. Let's go ahead and look at what this looks like if we look at it in GitHub. So I've pushed those changes to GitHub, and then if we go ahead and look at it in GitHub, you can see that our 3 different files are there. You can see that our commits are there. One thing that might immediately stand out is you'll see that this shows that it's unverified. And the reason for that is you can see here it's picked up this is my profile. And for my profile, I say that you have to sign commits. Something else that you'll notice is that I made changes, and one of those changes says that it's XXXX, and GitHub doesn't know who that user is. And then it also doesn't know who demo@gordonbeaming.com is. And that's because I haven't set up that as a email address on my account. Now, obviously, I want my commits to all be verified, so I'm going to go ahead and switch this config back. So now I've got my full config. I'm going to make another change to the file, and because I've got my other alias back again, I can just say git new file 4, and you can see there I didn't have to obviously do both those previous commands because I've got that alias. And then I can just say git push, and now that those changes are pushed, refresh on GitHub, I see my new file 4 commit, and of course I forgot to switch my profile. Okay, so one more time, I'm going to go and create a temp file number 5. I'm then going to go and commit that file. So I'll go CA and then I'll go new file 5. So before I do that, I need to go get me, so then switch to my signing profile. And now I can go ahead and run this. Run that. And it will ask me to sign it. Say yes. And then I go and push that. Now that I've successfully pushed that, I can go ahead and refresh this. And you'll see that this is now signed because this is one of my verified keys. Now, something that I didn't show, but it's worth pointing out here. So if you go to git config, so this is where your local config is. So the same way as I was showing you the sort of global config over here. If you look at your global config, you can see all that configuration that we've set. So you can see in this case, here's where the name, email, and signing key is. Here's where we're saying that we want the format to be SSH. And then we are telling it that we do want this to be signed, obviously because we are signing this commit. So that's all I had for you on git aliases. I hope you found some of this useful. If you look at the link in the description, I'll link out to this repo. I'll place all of my sample code there with my sample git aliases. And you can try those out. If you have any others that you use, share them down in the comments below. Otherwise, yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.